Mob Psycho 100 Season 1 begins by showing a mysterious figure with tremendous power who can destroy monsters and evil spirits without effort. This story will be set in a world where various strange phenomena cannot be explained by science. Whoever encountered this strange phenomenon was almost certain that they would be thrown into a terrifying abyss of darkness. However, a group of people is capable of fighting against the forces of darkness, and they are commonly referred to as Aspurs. Aspur is a human that naturally awakens, possesses, and can harness psychic powers. Upon awakening, most Aspurs possess the natural abilities to use psychokinesis, allowing them to manipulate things with their mind. They all have the basic ability to see spirits, sense others with psychic power, and create a protective barrier around themselves. The scene then switches and shows a man named Reijin Arataka, a self-proclaimed spirit medium who runs a low-cost psychic consultation business called Spirits and Such. Reijin had a female client that day who asked him to exorcise the evil spirits somewhere. Reijin immediately agreed, even though he lacked actual psychic abilities. Because of that, he only uses his intelligence and charisma to solve his client's problems with skills he calls secret techniques. Reijin then told them the costs they had to pay for the exorcism services. Judging that the fee was very expensive and unreasonable, the woman's boyfriend considered Reijin a fraud. Long story short, Reijin and his clients finally arrive at their destination, where there is an evil spirit that haunts the place. Because Reijin could not defeat the evil spirit alone, he called his disciple, a boy named Shigeo Kageyama or Mob. Mob is a middle school student who works at Reijin's spirit council for 300 yen an hour. When Mob arrived, the evil spirit seemed to underestimate him because of his geeky and unconvincing appearance. But unexpectedly, Mob turned out to have a great power, where he could easily destroy the evil spirit. After that, Mob asks Reijin why he summoned him to destroy the evil spirit, even though the evil spirit is very weak and easy to defeat. The panicked Reijin then reasoned that he didn't want to use his immense power because he didn't want to hurt the people around him. In fact, Reijin lied to Mob to hide the fact that he doesn't actually have psychic abilities. As his mentor, Reijin has made Mob promise never to use his powers against other people. The scene then switches and shows Mob having dinner with his parents and his younger brother, Ritsu. His mother always scolds Mob and compares him with Ritsu, an A student and member of the student council. Even so, Mob doesn't seem to mind it. Likewise, Ritsu always defends and is kind to his brother. Mob and Ritsu attend Salt Middle School, located in Seasoning City. Mob, known as a geeky student and not good at everything, academically and in sports, is often underestimated by his schoolmates, especially because of his geeky appearance with his dark bowl-shaped hair and nondescript expression on his face. Even so, it turns out that Mob secretly likes a girl at his school, named Tsubomi Takane, who is his childhood friend. One day while coming home from school, Mob gets a message from Reijin saying they have to go somewhere. Reijin apparently received a job from a client who asked him to eliminate evil spirits inhabiting a tunnel. According to information, many people disappeared after daring to enter the haunted tunnel. 30 years ago, there was a fatal accident that killed 30 people in the tunnel, and people think that the spirits of the victims of the accident still haunt the tunnel and cause the disappearance of those who dare to enter there. Long story short, Reijin and Mob finally arrived at their destination, where Mob immediately felt the presence of the evil spirits, which were quite strong. After the two of them entered the tunnel, the lowest level evil spirits immediately attacked them. While Mob is facing the evil spirits, Reijin tries to escape from the fight but instead encounters the male leader of evil spirits, who is much more powerful. He looked panicked because he lacked the skills to fight the evil spirit. Luckily, Mob immediately came to his aid by changing the size of the evil spirit to be very small. The leader of the evil spirit then reveals to Mob and Reijin that he is actually the deceased leader of a biker gang who died in a tunnel years ago with his men after a series of accidents. He warns of an even more powerful monster located deeper in the tunnel and begs Reijin and Mob to not fight it. But Mob seems to completely ignore the warning and instead goes deeper into the tunnel, where he finally meets the monster in question. Mob can easily defeat the monster and return an old photo to the deceased leader of the biker gang showing himself with his gang members. Seeing this, the deceased leader of the biker gang seemed very moved with happiness. Shortly afterward, the spirits of the leader and his gang are finally at peace and move on to the afterlife. A few days later, Reijin arrived at a middle-aged male client who complained of aching back and shoulders, as if an evil spirit was always hanging over him. However, Reijin said the man was simply exhausted from sitting in front of the computer too much watching adult films, so his back and shoulders hurt. After Reijin demonstrated his ability to massage, unexpectedly, the man finally recovered and gave him the appropriate fee. After that, Reijin and Mob seemed to be involved in a serious conversation, where Reijin seemed worried if Mob finally found out about him, who was not an Aspur, but only an imposter who claimed to be an Aspur. But it turns out that Mob only said that he was bored with his daily life and wanted to do challenging activities. The next day at Salt Middle School, a group of students met in a room. They are members of the telepathy club who are confused because one of their members has just decided to resign, because the club is in danger of disbanding after it drops below the minimum number of members. The founder and president of the telepathy club, a girl named Tome Kurata, desperately tries to convince other students in the school to join their club. However, none of the students wanted to join the club, so Tome was very frustrated. One of the club members then had the idea to invite Mob to join the club. But Mob immediately refuses to join because he has to work part-time after school at Reigen's place. Because Tome continued to insist, Mob finally contacted Reigen and asked him for permission. But Reigen immediately refused Mob's request and insisted he focus more on his work. Reigen says that the telepathy club is just a bunch of lazy students who don't want to lose space to relax. They go to great lengths to persuade Mob to join the club. Hearing this, Mob finally immediately left there. After that, Reigen takes Mob to a place where they have to disguise themselves as female students because the place they are going to is an all-girls school. Because Reigen looks suspicious, the school security forbids him from entering, so only Mob enters the school to meet their clients. Mob finally meets the clients who are students of the school, who informs him that a series of strange phenomena have occurred to their school, such as books in the library disappearing, strange noises heard in an empty room, and much more. At first, the clients seemed to underestimate Mob because he was shaking when facing the delinquent students. However, after Mob manages to find out the existence of the evil spirit that haunts the school and traps him in the school gym, they begin to admit that Mob has the ability of an Asper. The evil spirit finally shows himself and is visibly furious that Mob trapped it in the school gym. But Mob didn't seem to care about that and defeated the evil spirit in no time. Before disappearing without a trace, the evil spirit tells Mob that he was a loser in his previous life, just like Mob, and asks him to live a happy life before it's too late and he regrets it. Hearing this, Mob thought about it and pondered the evil spirit's words. The next day, when Mob decides to join the telepathy club so he can live his school life in peace, the student council suddenly comes and turns the telepathy club room into a room belonging to the body improvement club, which was just formed. After getting advice from the student council president and remembering his past with poor physical abilities, Mob finally decided to join the body improvement club. However, during the physical training undertaken by the members of the club, Mob seemed overwhelmed until he finally fainted and was taken to the club room to recover quickly. On the other hand, the telepathy club, which was allowed to remain in the club room now used to store bodybuilding equipment, commented that Mob would never become popular, even if he trained his physical strength. Mob says he doesn't want to be popular and just wants to build up his physical strength because he only relies on his psychic powers. Mob then shows his telekinesis power to Tome and the members of the telepathy club, which makes Tome excited and asks him to help her learn about the power of telepathy because she is very interested in aliens. But Mob immediately refused and said that he had to go back to doing physical exercises so that Tsubomi was attracted to him. Mob then asks Reigen about telepathy, but he reveals that he has no knowledge of telepathic powers and has never met anyone with such powers. On his way home, Mob is intercepted by a smiling masked woman, who tells him that she can help him become popular to attract Tsubomi's attention and date her. Intrigued, Mob finally follows the woman to the underground meeting area, where a sect known as LOL has been formed to serve a middle-aged man who seems gloomy and burdened with all the troubles in his life. The sect is led by Mr. Dimple, who has the power to make anyone burst out laughing. Upon arrival, Mob sees everyone present wearing the same mask as the woman who carried him. Mob is then brought onto the stage, where he meets one of his schoolmates, a girl named Ichi Mezato, standing next to the middle-aged man. Not long after, Mr. Dimple finally shows up and greets the rest of his followers, to which everyone immediately takes off their masks and laughs happily. After explaining the purpose of the LOL sect to Mob and two others, Mr. Dimple then asked his followers to put the smiling mask on the middle-aged man and Mezato. But Mezato then refuses, saying she is a reporter from the newspaper club in Mob's school who intends to expose the crimes that the LOL cult leader may have committed to gain many followers. However, how surprised Mezato was when she saw with her own eyes that the middle-aged man looked happy and laughed out loud after they put on the smiling mask. Mr. Dimple then says that he has found his happiness. Mezato, who felt something was wrong with the sect LOL, then tried to leave the place. But Mr. Dimple didn't let her go and told his followers to put the smiling mask on her. After putting on the mask, Mezato felt something strange happening to her, where she felt forced to laugh, even though she didn't want to laugh at all. But strangely, the smiling mask has absolutely no effect on Mob. When Mob is about to leave, Mr. Dimple does everything he can to stop Mob and persuade him to join the cult LOL. However, Mob gradually became irritated with Mr. Dimple, who was too pushy, then used a little of his spiritual power to free everyone there from the influence of Mr. Dimple's power. Mob realizes that Mr. Dimple is not a human but a high-level evil spirit who possesses a man and intends to kill Mob by ordering his followers to attack him. The strain causes Mob to reach 100% of his power and explode, unleashing a terrible amount of psychic power, exorcising Mr. Dimple, and freeing everyone from Mr. Dimple's influence. After that, Mob tells the whole incident to Raijin, who tells him that he just needs to be himself because by doing so, he has saved a lot of people, which is more important than being popular. The next day, the bad boys from Salt Middle School, led by a boy named Wanagawara, got into a fight with their Black Vinegar Middle School rivals. When the delinquent students from Black Vinegar Middle School are in a state of urgency, they call their hidden boss, a boy named Teruki Hanazawa, or who is familiarly called Teru. Besides being an Esper with great spiritual strength, Teru had a formidable physique, so he could easily defeat the delinquent disciples from Salt Middle School. Teru originally scorned people without psychic power, calling them commoners. He is accustomed to using his power freely in daily life, be it exams or sports, and he excels at it all. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the newly awakened Mob was surprised by the appearance of Mr. Dimple's weakened spirit trying to persuade Mob to join him and rule the world, like his real purpose when forming the LOL cult. Hearing this, Mob was about to eliminate Mr. Dimple once and for all and gave him no more mercy. Mr. Dimple was suddenly frightened and promised not to commit another crime so that Mob wouldn't wipe him off the face of this earth, even though it was actually just an act. Mob agreed not to destroy him as long as the evil spirit promised not to make a mess and interfere with his life. On the other side, Raijin has a pair of clients who ask him to eliminate the evil spirit that appears in the photo of the two of them. Raijin accepted the request and used his skills in Photoshop to erase the appearance of the evil spirit in the photo. Not long after, Mob comes to see Raijin with Mr. Dimple, where Mr. Dimple is very surprised to find out that a person with no spiritual power like Raijin is Mob's mentor. Even Raijin can't even see where Mr. Dimple is near Mob. Mr. Dimple immediately realized that all this time, Mob had only been used by Raijin. Mob then asked Raijin for advice regarding Mr. Dimple. To hide the fact that he is not an Esper, Raijin then tells Mob that he can do anything to Mr. Dimple because he is just a weak evil spirit. Meanwhile, at school, Mezato, who wants to find out about Mob and his great power, then goes to his younger brother, Ritsu. At first, Ritsu was reluctant to serve Mezato's curiosity, but because Mezato threatens to reveal Mob's immense power to everyone, Ritsu has no choice but to comply with her request. Ritsu reveals that since childhood, Mob has had extraordinary powers, and Mob is his role model in life. But for some reason, Mob thinks his power is unnecessary in his life, so he avoids using it so that he never again shows his power to others. Actually, Ritsu longed for the Esper abilities his brother always had and held some frustration at his brother, because Mob was naturally born with his psychic powers. Even though Ritsu loves his brother very much, he has an inferiority complex towards him, which is ironic. Mob has an inferiority complex towards Ritsu regarding his academic skills and social charisma. The next day when he was about to go to school, Ritsu asked his brother why now he rarely shows his strength to others. Mob says that he is reluctant to use his powers in everyday life, because these powers can't make him get good grades at school or have many friends. Mob even feels jealous of Ritsu because his younger brother is a smart student and charismatic, so he has many friends. Meanwhile, in another place, Wanagawara and the delinquent students then asked the Body Improvement Club to help them avenge Teru's actions that had beaten them badly some time ago. However, the founder and president of the Body Improvement Club, Musashi Goda, refused Wanagawara's request and said that all members of the Body Improvement Club were pacifists. Raised on a farm, Musashi is kind-hearted with a strong sense of justice who only resorts to fighting when left with no choice. Getting rejected from Musashi didn't necessarily make Wanagawara give up. Seeing Mob as the only skinny member of the club, Wanagawara thought of an idea to use Mob in his revenge plan. Long story short, Mob looks surprised when he finds a love letter in his locker. Mr. Dimple warns that the love letter could be a trap, but Mob seemed already excited, so he ignored Mr. Dimple's warning and immediately rushed to the park to meet the girl who sent him a love letter. On the other hand, Wanagawara sent a challenge letter to the delinquent students of Black Vinegar Middle School and asked them to come to the park. Apparently, the words of Mr. Dimple are right. The love letter turns out to be Wanagawara's trap to trick Mob into coming there. Knowing that Mob is a student of Salt Middle School, the delinquent students from Black Vinegar Middle School then take the boy into custody. At the same time, Wanagawara apparently sent a warning letter about the kidnapping of Mob by delinquent students from the Black Vinegar Middle School. Knowing that Mob had been kidnapped, Musashi was furious and immediately rushed to the school to free Mob. Long story short, Musashi and the members of the Body Improvement Club then beat up all the delinquent students of Black Vinegar Middle School and managed to free Mob. However, when they were about to leave, Teru suddenly appeared and knocked Musashi down with one blow. With his psychic powers, it didn't take long for Teru to overthrow Musashi and all the members of the Body Improvement Club. After that, Wanagawara and his friends came to take revenge on Teru. But again, Teru can easily defeat them until only Mob is left standing before him. Seeing Teru using his psychic powers on others as he pleased, Mob warned him not to be mean to other people, especially if they weren't Aspers. Mob then untied him using a little of his strength, at which point Teru seemed surprised to finally meet an Asper who was just like himself, especially when he saw Mr. Dimple, that kept sticking to Mob. Teru then challenges Mob to a fight to prove who is more powerful between the two of them. But Mob refused because he remembered Raijin's advice which forbade him to use his powers on other than the evil spirits. However, Teru seemed to have gotten too excited as he immediately launched an attack on Mob. Despite being heavily battered by Teru, Mob doesn't put up any resistance at all and protects himself with a psychic shield. On the other hand, Mr. Dimple, who was annoyed that Mob didn't resist, tried to confront Teru by putting all his strength into turning into his true form. However, unexpectedly, Teru can easily eliminate Mr. Dimple in an instant. At the same time, Mob then remembered his memories with Mr. Dimple. But strangely, he didn't feel anything in his heart at all. Teru, who felt very irritated because Mob was not provoked to release his power, then mobilized his full power and destroyed whatever was there because of the tremendous power Teru had. But Mob still stands by his stance and does not put up the slightest resistance. When Teru was about to kill him with a knife driven by telekinesis, Mob then used a shield and accidentally reflected it at Teru, so the knives cut Teru's hair in such a way. Teru, angry because he now looked ugly, because his hair was half bald, then took all his strength and said that now he really wanted to kill him. Because Mob keeps dodging his attacks and doesn't show his strength, Teru then boasts by saying that he is the greatest Asper in the universe. However, Mob says that Teru is just like himself, who is a loser if he doesn't have psychic powers. Hearing this, Teru immediately felt angry and strangled Mob to kill him. But Mob is still reluctant to fight back, which makes Teru feel surprised and confused by Mob's way of thinking. On the other hand, Mob is reminded of his past when he and Ritsu were little when they had an incident with a group of delinquent students who bullied them. Mob, who was in a desperate situation then, accidentally used his power and injured the delinquents and his brother. Turning to the present, Mob collapses unconscious when Teru strangles him, so Teru immediately leaves Mob, thinking he has defeated him. However, suddenly Mob awakens with a very powerful spiritual power and can rip all of Teru's clothes with the radiance of his power alone. Unconsciously awakening in unmeasurable form, Mob rips apart the school and hurls the rubble at a naked Teru, who is blasted off into the sky while apologizing and accepting Mob's ideals. Teru finally realizes that he is only human and shouldn't use his powers to harm others. In the aftermath, Mob realizes that he has used his powers against another person, which results in 100% of sadness, where he uses his powers to rebuild the school. After that, Mob tries to find Mr. Dimple's whereabouts, hoping the evil spirit doesn't really disappear from this earth, but Mob couldn't find him anywhere. Arriving at home, Mob then apologizes to Ritsu for what happened years ago when they were bullied by the school thugs. Ritsu apparently didn't mind it because Mob only wanted to defend and protect himself. That night, Ritsu saw a broadcast on television that reported a supernatural phenomenon about the ruins of a school flying into the sky, caused by the enormity of the Mob's power. Elsewhere, Mob is with Raijin when a male client who wants to speak to his late father arrives. With his very convincing acting and pretending to be his father, Raijin managed to deceive the man. But when the man asked for the code for the money safe, Raijin, who didn't know anything, took out his signature move by making the man faint. Raijin then tells Mob that it was just an act of self-defense. Since Mob plans to no longer use his powers after all that happened, Raijin then encourages Mob by saying that he has done a lot of good and helped many people by using his powers so that he can continue to use his powers to save humanity. The next day at school, Wanagawara witnessed a mysterious figure who had defeated Teru and destroyed the school building, then made him the secret school gang leader who deserves to be respected even though they don't know the true identity of the mysterious figure. On the other hand, Mezuto, who suspects Mob of being the one who caused supernatural phenomena at Black Vinegar Middle School, interrogates Mob to get information, but he shied away from the accusations, choosing not to say anything. After that, Mob accidentally crosses paths with Wanagawara and friends, who reveal that they are the ones who have sent Mob a fake love letter and framed him. Unbeknownst to them, Ritsu overheard the conversation and suggested that the student council reprimand the delinquent students not to bully other students anymore to create peace and tranquility in their school. While returning from school, Ritsu is approached by a man named Kenji Mitsura, who invites him to a place where he can increase his psychic powers. Ritsu, who was interested, followed Kenji's advice to come to a psychic research institute known as the Awakening Lab the next day. Arriving there, Ritsu saw several scientists conducting various researches on supernatural phenomena and Aspers. However, after meeting the Aspers in the facility, Ritsu immediately realized that the Aspers had minimal and weak psychic abilities. A young man named Takeshi whose abilities are only strong enough to simply bend spoons with full effort. Then there is a girl named Rei who can use clairvoyance, but the efficiency only is about 60%. There is a boy named Asahi who can use pyrokinesis and barely make a small flame, and the brothers Daichi and Kaido, who can use telepathy. Meanwhile, Kenji, the founder and sole financial supporter of the research facility, has absolutely no psychic powers and wishes to make artificial psychic abilities for all of society to use. Since they were all very weak, Ritsu was not interested in joining them. The next day at school, the student council president, a boy named Shinji Kamuro, confides in Ritsu to frame Wanagawara for stealing and being a pervert. However, Ritsu emphatically rejects the idea because slandering someone for an act they did not commit is extremely disgraceful. On the other hand, Ritsu could not move and finally obeyed Shinji's words. Long story short, Wanagawara, who had just returned from his physical training with Musashi, was surprised by Shinji, who accused him of being a thief and a pervert in front of all his classmates. Wanagawara immediately denied the accusation, but it turned out that all the evidence had pointed to him, so Wanagawara's efforts to defend himself were in vain. After that, Ritsu, frustrated because he had done such a disgraceful act, instead visited the Awakening Lab, hoping to awaken his psychic power and get out of this uncomfortable situation. Ritsu, angry with himself, then threw away the spoon he had been holding. After Ritsu left, Kenji became even more convinced that Ritsu had psychic abilities because the spoon he was holding became crookedly bent. On the other hand, thugs from other middle school gangs apparently have heard the news about a mysterious figure, Mob, who has defeated Teru and caused a supernatural phenomenon, where they then called the figure the White Tea Poison. They planned to challenge him to defeat him. Meanwhile, Ritsu, who was already at home, was surprised by the appearance of Mr. Dimple, who apparently managed to survive Teru's attack. After explaining who he is, Mr. Dimple tells Ritsu that he has awakened his psychic power so that Ritsu can see him. At first, Ritsu did not believe Mr. Dimple, but after he realized that he had bent many spoons with his own strength, Ritsu seemed happy because now he finally has psychic power like his brother. Mr. Dimple says he will help him learn and improve his powers. In fact, Mr. Dimple wants to use Ritsu for his own end, which is to rule the world. Mr. Dimple then tried to possess Ritsu's body. Unexpectedly, Mr. Dimple turns out to be unable to control Ritsu's body because his strength is very weak after being defeated by Teru. But on the other hand, with Mr. Dimple in his body, Ritsu can use the power of telekinesis to move various objects around him without having to touch them. While at school, Shinji gets into trouble again by going to other school thugs and making false accusations like he did against Wanagawara. Since Ritsu has been involved from the start, he has no choice but to follow Shinji's dirty plan to punish the delinquent students at their school. Shinji, who was pleased because his plan was successful and the delinquent students were silenced until they didn't move, felt very powerful with his position as the student council president. But not so with Ritsu, who feels guilty and frustrated because he has done such a disgraceful act. But at the same time, his psychic power increased significantly. With his growing psychic powers and Dimple's guidance, Ritsu develops a superiority complex. Ritsu then went to the Awakening Lab and showed his psychic abilities to all of them while Mr. Dimple took possession of his body. After that, Ritsu was confronted by delinquent students who wanted to take revenge on him, because Shinji said that Ritsu was the one who had framed them all. However, with his current psychic powers, Ritsu can easily defeat them. Teru, who accidentally to be there and saw Ritsu using his powers on other people, approached and advised him not to use his powers on ordinary humans anymore, as Mob had told him. Seeing Teru, who had defeated him, Mr. Dimple then warns Ritsu not to fight Teru because he has great psychic power. However, Ritsu ignored Mr. Dimple and was about to launch an attack on Teru. On the other hand, Teru, who thought that Ritsu was about to shake hands with him, then grabbed Ritsu's hand and held it. But Teru's experience and strong psychic powers nearly overwhelm Ritsu as he is forced to flee. After escaping from Teru, Ritsu finally realizes that his current strength cannot match Teru's and is determined to become stronger and defeat Teru and Mob one day. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Mob is approached by a woman who is an antique salesman, who persuades him to buy a vase. Since Mob had absolutely no interest in antiques, he decided to leave. However, the woman continued to persuade Mob, even asking him to touch the vase. She apparently intended to trap him and did various ways to get him to break the vase and pay compensation. Mob managed to avoid an incident that could cause the vase to break, but it turns out the woman didn't stay still until she finally cracked the vase and blamed Mob for it. After that, a man claiming to be her boss came and asked Mob to pay compensation for damaging the vase. Because Mob has no money, he finally asks Raijin to help solve the problem. Raijin, a swindler, could easily tell that the two of them had just framed Mob for a cheap vase. With his ability as a reliable con artist, Raijin can corner them both and scare them about the evil spirit that will haunt them if they continue to annoy Mob and himself. Hearing this, the woman and her boss laughed out loud because they thought Raijin was making things up. But then, suddenly, everything in the room fell apart, and the lights went out. After that incident, Raijin thanked Mob for using his power to scare the imposters. But Mob said he didn't do anything at all. Long story short, Shinji gets news that a delinquent student named Kanzaki, the gang leader of the Bean Sauce Middle School, wants to challenge White Tea Poison to a fight. However, Ritsu managed to defeat Kanzaki with Mr. Dimple's help, which was inside his body. When he came home from school, Shinji was visited by Kanzaki's men, who wanted revenge because their gang leader had been defeated. Thinking that Shinji was the one who had defeated Kanzaki, they beat him badly. The next day, Shinji asked Ritsu to clear up the misunderstanding, but he immediately refused and said Shinji deserved to be punished for his actions that had trapped Wanagawara and the other delinquent students. After that, Shinji was again the target of bullying by the school thugs from another school because they thought Shinji was the one who beat Kanzaki. Because of that, Shinji decided to lock himself in his room full of trash. On the other hand, Ritsu is increasingly feeling satisfied because his psychic powers have increased dramatically, where now he arrogantly claims to be White Tea Poison and plans to eradicate the delinquent students in the city. He then confronted the delinquent students in a narrow alley. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Teru, who had been secretly following Ritsu and the delinquent students for a long time, then rushed to tell Mob and took him there. However, unbeknownst to all, a mysterious man appears to be watching them from the rooftop and talking to someone over the phone. Long story short, the delinquent students then attacked Ritsu simultaneously. But with his psychic powers, and because of Mr. Dimple, Ritsu can beat them all without even bothering. Mob finally arrives there and asks Ritsu what has happened. Not wanting to get into trouble with Mob, Mr. Dimple rushed out of Ritsu's body and left from there. Ritsu then tells Mob that he has struggled to awaken his psychic powers because he is afraid that Mob will hurt him with his great power one day. Mob didn't react, and instead of getting angry at Ritsu, he even apologized to the delinquent students because his brother had beaten them all. Soon after, the man who had been watching them suddenly came out of his hiding place and attacked Ritsu. Seeing Ritsu, who was seriously injured, Mob immediately became angry and then launched a counterattack. The man's name is Chadre Koyama. He is an esper who is tough enough to overwhelm Mob. Koyama was about to kidnap Ritsu because he thought that Ritsu was the White Tea Poison who had caused a supernatural phenomenon some time ago. However, Mob didn't just let Ritsu be kidnapped and fought hard to save his brother. Meanwhile, at the same time, a male esper, Yusuke Sakurai, infiltrated the Awakening Lab and kidnapped the weak espers who were there. Switching back to Mob, who was involved in a fierce battle with Koyama. Mob gave out 100% of his power to face Koyama and accidentally revealed his true identity as White Tea Poison to the delinquent students. Because Mob exerted his full power, Koyama was then overwhelmed and used a sneaky method by spraying something at Mob, making him fall unconscious, and giving enough time for Koyama to escape from there while taking Ritsu away. Teru and Mr. Dimple then save Mob and takes him to Teru's apartment so he can rest and recover soon. Teru then revealed to Mob and Mr. Dimple that Ritsu has been kidnapped by Koyama, a member of Claw, an esper criminal organization bent on world domination. It is known that Claw has kidnapped other young teenage espers to brainwash them and use them for their evil plans. Mr. Dimple then tells Mob and Teru that Koyama may have learned about the Kageyama brothers from Kenji and the Awakening Lab. Not long after, Mr. Dimple, Mob, and Teru finally arrived at the Awakening Lab and found the lab in shambles. They then ask Kenji about what happened. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Koyama and Sakurai take Ritsu and the other espers to the hideout of the Claw organization called the 7th Division, where they meet a man named Terada, an esper and part of the upper echelon in Claw. Knowing that Koyama is overwhelmed with esper, who is a middle schooler, Terada then goes to kill Mob. However, Terada is no match for Teru, let alone Mob, so they too can easily defeat and capture Terada. After being interrogated by them, Terada finally gave all the information about Claw. Meanwhile, Ritsu and the other aspers are being detained and interrogated by one of Claw's higher-ups, a man named Muto, who then takes Kaido and seriously injures him. Muto said they would suffer the same fate as Kaido if they remained silent. At the same time, Mob and Teru force Terada to take them to Claw's hideout, where they imprison Ritsu and the others. Terada managed to escape and had time to attack Mob and Teru. But then, he can be easily defeated by Mob. On the other hand, Ritsu and the other aspers start their escape just as Mob and Teru infiltrate there but are immediately caught by the higher-ups of Claw nicknamed the Scar, including Koyama. Seeing Mob's arrival, Koyama was determined to take revenge on Mob for what he had done to him. However, Mob can defeat Koyama again without wasting his strength. After that, Mob, Teru, and Mr. Dimple, who possessed one of the guards to disguise himself, split up to find Ritsu faster. Mr. Dimple manages to defeat several guards, but he has to face off against a formidable male asper named Matsuo. Meanwhile, Teru is told that Ritsu and the others have escaped from the holding cell. While trying to find Ritsu's whereabouts, Teru met a formidable asper named Miyagawa, but he managed to defeat him. However, Teru seemed overwhelmed and didn't move when he faced Claw officials, namely Sakurai and Meraki, who managed to paralyze and capture him. Meanwhile, Mob enters a room and is ganged up by a doll controlled by a little girl named Mukai. When Mob manages to destroy all the dolls and defeat Mukai, he faces off with one of Claw's top brass, Tsuchiya, who tells him not to hold back just because she's a woman. Even though he was severely beaten, Mob didn't want to fight a woman because he remembered Raijin's advice. Hearing that, Tsuchiya felt humiliated and belittled. She then asks Mob to fight in a sporting manner. Because Tsuchiya insists, Mob finally fights with her, and in the end, she can be defeated easily. On the other hand, Mr. Dimple seems overwhelmed by Matsuo, who can control the evil spirits. Mr. Dimple tries to trick Matsuo, but he turns out to have a great skill, forcing Mr. Dimple to escape from there. Meanwhile, Ritsu and the escaped aspers meet a boy named Sho Suzuki. Knowing that Sho is an asper who is quite tough, Ritsu asks the others to immediately flee from there while he faces Sho alone. Long story short, after defeating Tsuchiya, Mob found Ritsu lying helpless, arousing his anger. Muto, who was there, then tried to catch Mob and Ritsu. However, Mob reaches the 100% rejection state, which then confuses Muto's mind and makes both of them unconscious. Not long after, Sho appeared and immediately caught Mob and Ritsu. Likewise, Matsuo managed to catch Mr. Dimple and locked him in an urn containing his evil pet spirits. Elsewhere, Raijin is seen tracking Mob's cell phone and finally arrives at the 7th Division. Claw's henchmen guarding the entrance try to stop Raijin, but then they let him in, mistakenly believing that Raijin is Claw's leader. Raijin then exploits the misunderstanding for the aspers from the Awakening Lab to escape the attempt to convince the lackeys of the error of their ways. Meanwhile, Mob, Teru, and Ritsu are trapped in a room that can prevent them from using their psychic powers. Ritsu seems to feel guilty when he finally reunites with Mob, but Mob said he was worried about Ritsu and was relieved to see him was fine. Ritsu then cries and apologizes to Mob for everything he has done. Elsewhere, the leader of the 7th Division, a male asper named Ishiguro, seems to be watching Mob and the others through the monitor screen. He intended to brainwash the three of them so they could join in on the brilliant plan he had prepared. However, Sho seems to disagree with Ishiguro's plan and says that the three of them will be recruited by Claw's headquarters. At the same time, Raijin finally arrives with the henchmen and frees Mob, Ritsu, and Teru. However, when they were about to leave, Mob, Raijin, Teru, and Ritsu were confronted by Ishiguro and his men, Sakurai, Matsuo, and Meraki. They revealed that Raijin was not the leader of Claw. Raijin then convinces the henchmen to leave Claw and make something more important and valuable out of their lives. Ishiguro then launched an attack at them, which was able to even knock Mob to his knees. But then Raijin kicks Ishiguro down and warns Mob not to use psychic powers against others. Raijin then quipped the Claw in 7th Division for only using other people for their benefit. Long story short, a fierce battle was inevitable. While Teru and Ritsu fight against the higher-ups of the 7th Division, Mob is undecided whether to use his psychic powers to save his friends or flee, as Raijin suggests. Just as Mob is about to use 100% of his power with murderous intent, Raijin stops him and tells him that he will end up suffering for his actions and it's okay to run away and save himself. The scene then switches to the past when Mob first meets Raijin and enlists his help controlling Mob's ever-growing psychic powers. Raijin then advises Mob to always use his powers for good and accept himself. Switching to the present, Sakurai suddenly appeared behind Raijin and immediately attacked him right in front of Mob. But Raijin was miraculously unharmed from Sakurai's attack nor from the attacks of the other 7th Division higher-ups. their psychic attacks had absolutely no effect on Raijin. It was later revealed that Raijin's words of wisdom to Mob made Mob change the flow of his psychic energy and unknowingly send his psychic power to Raijin. After Raijin manages to incapacitate Ishiguro, he then punishes the higher-ups of the 7th Division for their delusions of greatness. He reminds them that they are all still human, even with their psychic powers. Raijin's words of wisdom turned out to be able to drag Sakurai and Meraki back to the real world and finally realize their mistake. However, unlike Ishiguro, who then rejects Raijin's philosophical views by claiming that Espers are elite and superior to other human beings, and they all must be worshipped. Mob then refuted Ishiguro's words, saying that having psychic powers doesn't make someone popular. Ishiguro, who did not accept this thought, began gathering his psychic energy to destroy the 7th Division and everyone in it. However, Sho suddenly appeared and immediately launched an attack on Ishiguro and was able to easily defeat him. After that, Sho said that the 7th Division of Claw would be disbanded. He then expresses his disappointment to Mob and says that Mob is a coward before he finally leaves. Shortly afterward, Matsuo was about to attack Mob again with his evil pet spirits. Unexpectedly, Mr. Dimple, who was locked in the urn, turned out to have eaten all the evil spirits there and paralyzed Matsuo. On the other hand, Sakurai and Meraki finally realized their mistake and promised to use their powers to protect and save others. They both then ask Mob to stop the criminal organization Claw before the leader achieves his goal of world domination. A few days later, Mob and the others continued their daily lives. One day, Ritsu meets Shinji, who has realized his mistake and decides to apologize to Wanagawara and the other delinquent students. However, Wanagawara doesn't mind this and realizes that many people don't like him either. On the other hand, Teru decides to become a mentor to the Espers in the Awakening Lab so that they can increase their psychic powers. Meanwhile, Raijin then asked Mr. Dimple to work on him with Mob. Because of the power lent by Mob, Raijin is currently able to see Mr. Dimple and interact with the evil spirit. Elsewhere, Sho is seen contacting the leader of Claw, Toichiro Suzuki, who turns out to be his biological father. Sho then recounted everything that happened in the 7th Division, and the anime's first season ended here. The moral that can be learned from this anime is never to brag about our strengths or privileges because, after all, we are only human, just like everyone else. Becoming human beings who benefit others and humanize other people are most important.